was your plan, just so Mike can take off once we get to both audits. You might be on mute, John.
That is my plan. That is my plan.
Great. Was your plan, just so Mike can take off once we get to
Who's that?
my echo. I don't know what's going on.
There's Mary.
Mike's joining right now.
Oh, okay, good. Do you still hear an echo?
Nope.
I think it was the overlap of the live stream and the live.
All right, great. Well, I think we have everyone here. How you doing, Mike?
Good evening, everyone. I'm just getting my things in front of me here. Yep, I can hear you.
I'll call the meeting to order. This is the December 13th, 2022, 5:30 p.m. regular meeting of Norwalk. Roll call. I'll go around the video screen. Lisa, David, Kelly, and Mary. And any public participation? Anyone out there? Seeing no one out there? All right. I will end the public participation and go to administration. Let's start out with item 4A, approval of the minutes of the November 8th, 2022 meeting. Somebody want to make that motion? David made the motion.
Good.
So let's open it up. Any changes? Anyone see any changes? No? Want to make any comments? None? All in favor of approving the minutes for that meeting? Aye. Unanimous. We'll go to item 4B, the financials. It's to approve the Norwalk Housing Corporation audited financial statements for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2022, to be presented by Michael. Page is yours.
Michael, you're on mute.
Me. Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's always a pleasure meeting with you folks and going over the audit results. This is the June 30, 22. Do believe we're starting with Norwalk, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, so this should be fairly quick. The June 30, 22 report, if you had a chance to look at last year's, you might have noticed that this year there's a new audit report format. And so that's something that has changed from last year. The standard setters have expanded the disclosures of management's responsibilities for the statements and the auditor's responsibilities. So now this report, at least for Norwalk, is on 2 pages, but it's got a few bullet points you'll see on the second page, but it's still our clean opinion. There were no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses that we would have had to report to the board. So obviously that's good news. And I know it's reflective of what you've seen during the year. I don't think there's any major changes to what we have, at least, or what you've got in the audit and what we're opining on. There wasn't really a lot of activity in 22 year, as you can see, statement of activities, around 21,000 of revenue, 13,000 of expenses. So fairly straightforward. The disclosures in the financial statements haven't really changed. There is a major change that I'll get to in NRA's audit that is not technically effective yet for Norwalk, and it may not even be relevant because it's not effective for 501c3 type organizations. The only thing I don't know if Eugenie, if you want to talk about it, or if the board wants to talk about it, you reached out to me this past week or last week with a question as to use of funds
For Northwalk.
for Northwalk. Is that something we need to discuss or not?
I'm not sure. Is Brian wants to discuss that?
That was more just internal, just for some of the planning we're doing, the pre-development work we already talked about at the board, unless the board's
Okay.
interested. Yeah, I don't see.
Okay,
any
I didn't want to just dismiss that if something that was important enough. Okay. The 990 is pretty much done. It's just waiting for this board to formally approve the financial statements, the audit, and then Form 990, which you know gets filed for 501c3 organizations, not for governmental entities. So we don't have that for the NRA audit. But that's just kind of waiting to go. It was due November 15th. You get an automatic extension. We filed that electronically, so that's not an issue. And then when all this dust kind of settles on the audits, we will just finalize that. The Northwalk financial statements, as far as any state requirement, there's no requirement to send it to OPM like we do for NRA. I imagine you give a copy of this to the city. I couldn't recall or not.
No, I
Okay.
haven't.
No, I don't think there's a requirement to do so. I wasn't sure if you did send that over to them, but so that's pretty much it. No findings, nothing really of any major significance, I think, on this year's audit. So
Any questions? Anyone have any comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll call the motion. All in favor of approving the Northwalk Housing Corporation audited financial statements for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2022? Aye.
Aye.
Looks like it carried unanimously. That ends our administration. There's no business, new business, or old business. No reason to go into executive session. So will somebody make a motion for adjournment of Northwalk?
So move.
Okay, seconded. All in favor? Aye. We'll move on to Norwalk Redevelopment. I called this meeting to order at 5:36 p.m. on December 13th, 2022. Roll call, we have Lisa Cooper, myself, Mary Peniston, Kelly Bloom, and Mr. Westmoreland, David Westmoreland. Any public participation? Does anyone out there want to participate? Ask questions? Seeing no public participation or hearing no public participation, I will move on to item 4, the administration. The first item A is to approve the minutes of the November 8th, 2022 regular meeting. Do I have a motion to do that? All right, Mary, and I'll open it up to anyone want to make a comment, make changes, observations. None, seeing none, all in favor of approving those minutes? Aye. Carries unanimously. We'll move on to B, financials, and it's to approve the Norwalk Redevelopment Agency audited financial statements for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2022, to be presented by none other than our auditor, Michael. Stage is back to you.
once again, thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is the Norwalk Redevelopment Agency's 3022 audit we'll be reporting on. And again, you'll see some similarities to the organizations outside of the governmental area. And then there will be some couple of differences I'll kind of point out. The one similarity is that here, the audit report has also changed. And now it runs 3 pages for Norwalk Redevelopment Agency, and probably for most governmental entities you might have seen otherwise. And again, it's in the same realm. The Governmental Accounting Standards Board did the same kind of thing and expanded the language for anyone reading these statements to know more of what the management's responsibilities are for the audit and financial statements and the auditors. So again, you can, it's somewhat self-explanatory once you read through it, and then you'll see, like in the auditor's responsibilities, there's actually 5 bullet points delineating those things. So pretty much of a major change when it comes to the audit reports. It hasn't really changed in a long time. So so that's something that's different. As far as the financial statements are concerned, the one thing I want to point out up front that is a change that was effective this year is in the lease accounting end of things. And it was GASB 87, not to bore you with our standard numbers and all that, but it was accounting for leases. It had been delayed for a couple of years, and this is also taking place in the publicly held and non-public company world this coming year. But to boil it down, in the past, leases were recorded pretty much when the lease payment was being made. So every month when Norwalk Redevelopment would pay its rent, rent expense would be recognized on a monthly basis. Okay, you spend your cash and you'd have an entry to recognize rent expense for whatever the payment was. Well, in the last few years, the standard boards felt that really wasn't the reality of the situation. The reality was, if you signed a 3-year lease, you made a commitment for a 3-year period of time to make these payments. So that to them, it was really what's being called the right to use the asset of, let's say, your office space. And you also had a liability, which is basically the present value of those 3, 4, 5 years worth of payments. So literally what's happening now on your books, and Eugenia did a great job. I gave her the standard to read, and we kind of helped each other just kind of develop the information for the statements this year. But to use your numbers, you really have, at the end of June 30, 22, roughly $112,000 of an asset and $112,000 of a liability, which represents the remaining payments you have on the Belden Avenue lease. Washington Street lease really didn't come into play because technically it didn't really start until after June 30th, the payments at least. So next year you would have to include it in the information. So it's kind of, at the end of the day, it really hasn't affected things too much, other than, and this might come into play with other governments, especially towns and in the publicly held arena. If you have an asset and you have a liability being added to the balance sheet, it could affect debt covenants, debt to equity ratios and the like. So there is, there could be real life effects of this, not here, but just to kind of give you the quick and dirty on that. And the reason it's been delayed for a few years, quite honestly, is in many large organizations, say the IBMs in the large cities in this country, they've needed a lot of time. They've got a lot of leases. Some of these companies might have thousands of leases, and to gather that information and make the calculations, it's been quite an effort. So I think enough said on that end, but that is a change from last year. We'll continue going forward. You'll see some language in the management's discussion analysis that Brian and Eugenia kind of worked up. And there's a footnote we have on that too. You guys have, I should say, your statements. But so that is a change. From an operational standpoint, I think the only thing I really want to point out when I gave the drafts to Eugenia and to Brian and kind of looked at it, typically you guys budget for a break even type of thing, the revenue and the expenses as far as what's coming, kind of going through and out. And this year, if you look at the statement of activities, I'm looking at page 7 in the draft, you'll see a negative change of about $84,000. And my understanding in discussing this with Eugenia was that was for the most part unbudgeted personnel expenditures. Roughly, I think it was 100,000, I think you said, and then there was some additional savings and administrative expenses and the like. So the net of those is a result of the negative change this year, where typically you won't see that. Otherwise, revenues are pretty much in line with last year. I know the last few years has been kind of a quiet period versus what maybe went on even pre-COVID and prior to that. But from an analytical standpoint, nothing really was out of whack as far as we're concerned. I think just to kind of very quickly point out again, when we do the audit of NRA, and especially because I think everybody knows this is a federal single audit, because the CDBG expenditures are more than 750,000. So we have to do more testing and more work on this kind of an audit than we would do, obviously, on a Norwalk or even any other type of 501c3 audit we do, or governmental entity. So we do a fair amount of testing. Again, no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses that we have had to report to you. And the thing I always like to point out up front, which is very important, are kind of the ends of the report. I'm just going to my table of contents quickly. If you look at the last 2 pages, the schedule of findings and question costs, I guess it's the last page now here. I was looking at page 25 and 26. 25 shows almost $1.8 million this year of CDBG monies were spent. Clearly, that's over 750,000. So we have to do a federal single audit here. And if we could not find the backup, if we couldn't get satisfied as to the funding of that money and to who that money is being given to and the organizations that are being funded through CDBG, we'd have to report on that in the schedule of findings and question costs on page 26. So, there's only a couple of is at the end of that report. Section 2 and section 3 doesn't say a lot, but it's very important because it says there's no findings or question costs. And I don't want, as a board, I don't want you to take that for granted, because audits are still very much a paper chase and trying to get the backup. And I think it's probably a good time for me to just point out and thank, Brian and Eugenia and Lena and Stephen. I work very closely with him on the CDBG stuff. It's a real team effort. You really should understand that we don't make any adjustments to the statements. You guys do a great job from an internal standpoint in getting us the information. And I want to really thank all of them, because it's a very efficient process. And so those are really the highlights. I did mention, again, the audit report did change as far as the language. Lisa's new standard was effective this year. But again, from an operational standpoint, other than the change in net assets I mentioned, nothing really, I think, major compared to the prior year. There are some other changes which we were able to document. And again, there's no tax return when you're a governmental entity. There is no tax filing as far as the 990, so there's nothing on that end to worry about. I will leave it to the chair's discretion. I think we do this. We kind of have to do this on an audit. If you want to have the staff kind of drop off at least for a few minutes and have us and you, the board, just have a dialogue about things just for a couple minutes.
Okay, good point. I'll ask the staff. Well, we'll go into executive session and ask the staff to drop off.
Yeah, we're gonna have to figure out the live recording and everything. Katie, you're gonna have to pull off the live, and then we're gonna have to stop streaming.
Right.
gonna
Stop
be a
recording
problem?
and stop stringing. No. And then I can step off. Do you want me to make you host, Brian, and you can start those
I'm
things?
gonna have
or
to
at
jump
least
off
start
too.
the-
I think I'm gonna jump off too, if that's of the board's interest.
Oh,
We might have a
Um,
functional problem here.
Okay.
Let me make it maybe easy then. I'll just say to the chair, I'll ask the question first. And if you give me a different answer, then we'll maybe have to go in executive session. I don't have anything of any concern to pass on to the board as far as what I mentioned, significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, without putting any words in anybody's mouth. But if you have things to discuss with me, we probably should go in executive session.
I see no reason to go into executive session.
Fair enough.
I'm satisfied with everything. Anyone
And-
else?
Just to leave this for a final thought there, if anybody does, I know you have my email address. I know Eugenia and Brian have my email address, and you feel free to contact me, so.
Okay. So since we've not gone into executive session, do I have the motion to approve the financial statements for the year ended June 30th, 2022 as presented? See a motion. David makes the motion. Lisa seconds. All in favor? Aye. It's unanimous. I thank you, Michael.
John,
Okay.
can you thank us? Can we also, as the board, thank the staff for the good job?
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. And I actually like to personally thank Eugenia for all the work she does all year. It's a lot, and she's one of the most meticulous people I've ever worked with. So thank you, Eugenia. I appreciate
you're
it.
welcome.
Mike as
It's
well
my
for all your
pleasure.
support.
Thank
I just for the board's benefit, I want to echo Brian's comment there. And I was able to come out into the field in August and get a lot of the compliance work done with Eugenia and Lena that day. I'm sorry I missed Brian. He's always busy and he's out and about. But and I will tell you that it has been a very efficient process in the last couple of years. And I know Eugenia is a big part of that. And I do want to thank her for that. And just to kind of button it up, just so you all know, once we finalize the report, we'll submit final reports to staff, to Brian and Eugenia, and then we upload a digital copy of the report to OPM's website. That's due by December 31st. Obviously, that's not going to be a problem getting that done. And that fulfills your requirement of getting the report to the state. There's nothing else you kind of need to do. So that would kind of conclude the 22 audit for you. And I want to thank you all.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to add I also wanted to thank Eugenia. I see her every other week to sign checks, and I go through them. She's meticulous. And
I am.
flip pages.
Sometimes a pain in the
And
neck, but
Yeah, well, I didn't say that. When I ask a question, she knows the answer right away. She can, and then she'll go pick out further documentation to support her position. So I thank you, Eugenia. Pleasure working with
you're
you.
welcome.
So-
You're welcome.
Chair, Mr. Chair, if I could just add one quick thing, the audit framework, I was looking for the word, that I would typically discuss with the board. And I think everybody understands, I think here, and I know Eugenia and Brian can understand this, so they don't need to drop off the call for me to say this to you folks in the board. But, you all always should keep in mind the fact of segregation of duties. So I understand, you only have a few people on the accounting staff, and this is pretty much in many organizations these days. Not a lot of folks have 5, 6, 10 people doing the accounting function, especially with accounting software and computer software. It's been very streamlined these days. So, but you shouldn't let your guard down either, right? And so as a board, always make sure you keep that in mind. Even if there's only a few people, continue to have a dialogue and look at things and do your oversight. And that goes a long way in making sure that, and it's not saying this about that it's Brian as the exec or Eugenia as the the accountant, but it's the positions that you have there, and not as long as one person isn't gaining control and running the show. And I know you all know that, but I like to just point that out every year on the board meeting. So that's a main thrust of the whole internal control system. So, and I don't have any concerns about anything. So, but still, don't let your guard down. With that,
I
I
think
wish
you might be on mute, John.
holiday season. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I think you might be on mute.
Thank you,
John.
Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
All righty. Take care.
You
Okay.
too. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Well, now we'll put Eugenia on stage
Okay,
with the,
okay.
so we can approve the
So,
Norwalk Redevelopment Agency Statement of Revenues and Expenditures for Operating Fund 100 for the year to date, October 31st. Eugenia, all
Yes.
yours.
thank you. For the year-to-date period ending October 31st, the Operating Fund 100 had actual revenues of 480,000 versus budgeted revenues of 476,000, which resulted in a favorable variance of 4,000. The actual expenditures of 563,000 versus budgeted expenditures of 579,000 resulted in a favorable variance of 16,000. This is due to a favorable variance of $28,000 in personnel expenses, offset by $12,000 of an unfavorable variance in administrative expensive. Legal fees of $30,000 were paid to Shipment for 1517 Chestnut Street, and these expenses will be reimbursed to the agency by Spinnaker once the LDA is signed. The actual operating deficit of $83,000 versus the budgeted deficit of $103,000 resulted in a $20,000 favorable variance.
And if I could add just to that, I was going to do it under we're going to talk about 1517 Chestnut today, but I just wanted to be really clear and just let you know what's going on over there. So the reason why we're having these legal expenses is the continued negotiation of the land disposition agreement for that project. We initially, put a budget number together. The project has gone through multiple iterations based on city council feedback, based on negotiations with the developer. So it's, gone a little bit more than what we had thought. In the LDA, though, in the term sheet that we have approved by the council, I think it's in the term sheet, but actually in the LDA, the amount is specified at $150,000 as our cap. So as soon as we execute on that LDA, we'll be able to get those reimbursed. But to be fully transparent, we are, we're maintaining that exposure for the time being and cash flowing that. I've talked about this with the city, recognizing, our work that we're trying to put forth on Webster Lot, and we put in for city capital to help avoid this in the future. But I just want you all to be aware of what's going on over there, because it's going to continue for the next few months. They have the final draft LDA now in their hands. So I'm really hoping to resolve this in the next couple of months here. But these are just expenses that we're going to be incurring that were set up for reimbursement.
Thank you. With that information, any other questions about the Operating Fund 100? Seeing none, do I have a motion to, I have the motion to, everyone want to vote on approving payments for Operating Fund 100? All in favor? Unanimous? Thank you. We'll move on to item number 5. Business. A is the Webster Lot updated pre-development planning session. I'm going to turn it over to you, Brian. You could actually, if you go through the whole section, business section, I'll be fine. That'd be great. So.
Yeah, no problem. Give me one quick second here. Is this you mean the 1517 Chestnut? I'm looking at the agenda right now. Do I have the wrong one up in front of me?
That's what that says.
I think you might have been looking at the old agenda. Or
I'm
I just
looking at December 13th. The first item is the Webster Lot update and pre-development planning.
No.
Yeah, I think you might have got the initial one that we had to amend because we're not ready to bring that item. I'm happy to talk about Webster Lot, but the actual action item on there's an updated agenda that just has the one item for 1517 Chestnut.
Yeah, the updated agenda was sent to you all
It was right after that.
Yeah, about 15 minutes after that initial
All right.
one was sent.
As I told you, I'm under the weather.
No, it's all good. I apologize for the confusion.
Okay.
Do you want me to share my screen so you can see the agenda that we're working off of? Would that help?
Sure.
Okay, give me one quick second here. Okay, can you see my screen?
I see it.
Okay, hold on. This
Yeah.
is not what we need. All right.
Okay, Business
So this,
is 15,
yeah, business
17.
1517 Chestnut. We just have that one item. If you want, I'm happy to provide just a general update on Webster. I don't know if you all saw this Economic and Community Development Committee meeting. We actually selected the developer there. It's Quarterra, and then we'll come back with a more detailed update at the next meeting is my plan. We're trying to do some financial analysis over there in the meantime, and we have a bid out. Originally, we thought we would get the quotes back, but we didn't. So that's the reason why it came off the agenda, just to clarify. In terms of the business of 1517 Chestnut, what's before you tonight is the authorization for me to execute a contract with AKRF for the Chestnut Street traffic analysis. So the developer put forth an analysis of potential one-way operations for Chestnut a while back. We've been talking about this with the city and Jim Travers in pre-development meetings to take a look at that report. What we're trying to engage is a consultant to do a third-party review of what the developer put forth to make sure that, whatever recommendations we're including in the land disposition agreement are in line, with what is actually beneficial to the area. So that's what this is before you tonight. The contract is included as an attachment to your packet. The total amount is about $8,500. This will be funded actually through CDBG resources, and it'll be working with TMP to engage in the study. And this is just for the one way. They're still going to be required to do a full traffic impact analysis as part of their entitlement process. But we want to have a handle on this before we go, through the Common Council approval process, given the scale and scope of development that's been going on over there. And feedback we actually received during the TOD planning exercise we did around the station area. So this is more of an add-on to that. But that's what's before you tonight. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Not seeing any. I ask for motion to authorize the executive director to execute a contract with AKRF for the Chestnut Street traffic analysis. Lisa made the motion. I'll second it. All in favor? Can't see everyone, but I assume it's unanimous. Then I'll move on to new business. Does anyone want to bring up anything in new business? Discuss anything? I'm prepared to discuss the flu. No, I'm joking. Old business, seeing none. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I just have one question on old business.
Okay.
Brian, has there been any motion on the proposal you were looking at around Leonard Street and Commerce?
Yeah, so I've been going back and forth, talking with the property owners. I actually just met with Mutual Housing. Was it yesterday? I met with them again yesterday. I met with them the week before. The larger development project is becoming a little bit unattainable based on the discussions. So what we're going to be doing is looking at just a 13-unit development rehab of a 25 Leonard. And it's just based on the availability and interest of people in the area for participating in a larger project, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks.
I'm happy to follow up offline with anybody if I could go into the details of that. But basically what it is, I think the next step, what we need to do is order an appraisal, understand what we're dealing with in terms of value on the property. And then also I'll put together an initial pro forma financial analysis on it. And I'll be able to provide a little more update. If you'd like it, I think it might be good if I could include that on the next agenda as well. I think it'd be helpful for everybody.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So motion to adjourn has been made. All in favor? Aye.
Happy
David, I
holidays,
can't-
everybody.
Okay.
Yes, happy holidays.
Happy
holidays. Everybody be
Good
safe.
night.
You too. Take care.
Stay
Take care.
healthy.
All
Bye-bye.
right, thanks.
All right,
Bye.
happy holidays, everybody.